I agree. No one is at the Enron level. How is everyone this morning? What's that?
Hey guys, I deactivated my intro yesterday, so you don't get your paint sploosh. Wait, maybe you can get your paint sploosh after all. Boom! Paint sploosh.
Perfect.
There you go. This is what happens when I deactivate my paint sploosh because I think I might have time to chat with you guys at the end and I don't want to sploosh you again. So I'm just gonna leave my sploosh on. To heck with splooshing again. If you get splooshed again, you get splooshed again. If you get covered in green and blue paint, it's not my fault, okay? It's Justin's fault. He made the intro. How are you, everybody? Carrie Michael Cosby, you're new? Are you new, or are you, is that a new name for an old person? If you are new, welcome. Otter and Dragon Eye and Planer and everybody. Should we do what they call the Romper Room say hi's? I like the Romper Room good mornings. Francis and Twisted Oma and Jedi Jared. I want everybody to be recognized. That's why Crowley Hamster and Zeke. And suddenly, poof! And exactly, Margaret. I apparated with that sans intro, right? So, okay, warning up front. Kiri did not empty this morning, and that means we are 99.999% likely to get a dog emergency within like half an hour. So we may have a dog emergency coming up. Morning, Kaz. Whoa, it's all caps Kaz. So yes, so we're probably technically you're working. Oh, okay. Well, we like that. Technically, you're working, Carrie. It's good. Welcome anyway. You've been lurking. Yes. Dog emergency, imminent. Kiri emergency. I thought of a good one yesterday, which was Kiri-tastrophe. That's a good one. So we might, we'll hope that doesn't hit. Kiri emergency means I have time to get her outside. All right. So yes, old dog is old, and so we may have to humor her at some point during the stream. Yes, indeed. Yeah, you get it, Crowley. Just old dog. Irradiated colon from radiation treatment from her cancer years ago. She's still around, so the radiation treatment was definitely a plus, but it means that she is unpredictable in some areas, shall we say. Yay! So one thing I want to say to you guys this morning is Justin and I were talking because David, who has great ideas often, which is part of why I love him, has mentioned that it's hard to just set up to watch our stream right when it starts because we don't go live like really far in advance. So what I'm going to start trying to do, because it's nice when it gives you guys time to kind of gather together in the chat room, is I'm going to try to essentially walk in here before I make my breakfast and go live so that Justin, when he gets in, 10 or 15 minutes pre-stream, can hit the button and we have the starting soon screen. So don't be surprised if you see it go live and you have to wait a lot longer than usual, because I know usually I hit starting soon, at or after 9:30 and then you guys only have to wait like 2 to 5 minutes. Expect a bit of a longer wait, but we want to give you guys time to get in the chat room so you can just set up the stream to go and then you can fire and forget. It's a little bit just a quality of life improvement that I'm going to try my best to remember to do. And I'm going to depend strongly on my wonderful boyfriend to remind me. Except he's probably going to forget that he even suggested it. So I need to put a sticky note up or something of log in early. Maybe if I put that on my muffin pan, then I should be good.
That will definitely get you into the habit.
Yes. We do have a David tertiarily, at least for the first part of the stream, y'all, today. He's trying to recharge his laptop, so he's like, I'm going to be sitting in on your stream. But yes. Yeah, dog emergencies are totally just not Kiri's fault. I don't get mad at her unless I've taken her out like twice and then she still hasn't done it and then she promptly poops on the floor. Then I will admit, then I kind of get short-tempered. But I've worked hard on this. I've worked hard on not blaming Kiri. My phone alarms are dicey though sometimes because I don't remember what they're for. Hey, Scott Beals, good to see you. Twisted Oma says, hi, David. Are you going to say hi to the chat? Oh, come on. You wave. He's turkey. He's such a troll. Why am I dating this troll?
Hi, chat.
All right, there you go. You get your David sultry tones for the morning. All right. So maybe we'll have David come in and do a guest spot again at some point, but we'll have to coordinate with his schedule, his actual work schedule, since he has actual work. So let's go and to do Twisted Oma is waving back. Because apparently he's your fellow troll. Hey, Dabber. Good to see ya. All right. Yes, just in time. So, all right, let's do some NMM today. Let's do the chest. Because in order to attach his little paw, I need to really do the chest. So I need to get painted down on that. And his little paw slots in. Except that I'm having trouble slotting it in. Because I put it together, and I did make an error in that, really I should have held off and not glued in the treasure chest. There we go. Not glued in the treasure chest, at least not until I checked fit with the arm. So what I have is I have a small gap on the shoulder because I didn't check fit I didn't realize his arm slotted in that tight. And this is the thing when you've got a multi-part figure, you want to kind of tack it together and kind of test it to see if you can make everything work together. So, especially if you've got an arm attached to something else that's attached to the body that's also glued to the something else, you could easily get into trouble. I'm sure you've all run into this when you've tried to glue on like a two-handed sword, right? So yeah. So essentially, I have let myself in for more work because I now have a small gap to fill if I want this Rocky to be, pristine and awesome. But that's all right. Anyway, I thought we would do the chest today, and since the other areas on this model that I was doing NMM on are quite difficult, I thought doing a simple gold NMM on the chest bands, or brass or bronze, whatever you want to call it, they're all around the same color gamut, would be a nice change. Something easy for once, not all this complicated crap that Anne usually covers. get in over my head a lot. We're back to well palette today. Woohoo! We'll probably go back to wet palette when I'm working on Troll or Giant, because they're big. And Troll is a very organic model as far as how I'm working on him. It's weird how I switch back and forth now, like depending on my concept, like almost my mental concept for how I want the model to look. And the size of the mini definitely makes a difference as well. I'm going to start with black and brown. Often I would start with walnut and bring it up, but I think I want the chest to start dark, but when I start highlighting the bands on it, I want them to come up fairly light, so I don't have to start quite as dark as with walnut. If you're going for a really dark wood, like a walnut, then start with walnut and bring it up toward that dark brown range, because you aren't bringing your highlights up very much on a walnut, because it's such a dark wood, you definitely want your shadows to be extremely dark. And on wood, I always start dark, work light. The other option is to start mid-tone and then put in your seam lines, but that takes a lot more brush control than starting dark and just filling in between your seams. So you save yourself a lot of work and pain if you do your shadow first, essentially, in my opinion. Other people may argue with me. They are free to. Free to argue. So we will start with a big brush. Where's my big brush? Lately, I've been really liking my Raphael, but then I misplace it because I've been using it for everything. Oh well. Backup brush. Where's the backup brush? Oh, there it is. It was just, it was pointed the wrong way. I always look for the light butt because all my other brushes have dark butts, and it was inverted, so I did not see it. I wonder where I put my number 2. It's around here somewhere. Well, we'll start with this. So this is a brush I've been using a lot lately, as opposed to my... Hey, Scalcy. Rocky loves you too. Here, we'll give you his happy face. I still have to correct his little mouth so that he's not happy on one side and sad on the other. I have to give him a smile on this side. And then I have to correct his other eyeball. Because I think I like big-eyed Rocky for the treasure and not evil Rocky for the treasure. I think I might go with an evil Rocky eyeball when I do the pouncing one, just so he looks a little wicked. But yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Hey, Strange. So yeah, I've been using this brush a lot lately. Y'all know that usually I use, well, anybody who's been watching for any amount of time knows that the brush of my heart that I've been using for high-level painting for over 20 years is the Da Vinci Maestro Series 10 size 1, which is a much more narrow brush. So here's and this kind of shows too how you always want to never just get in a rut and just stay there. Kind of make yourself try different things, because you can see how these brushes are very dissimilar in actual size and in width, and so they're actually good for different things, but both of them have these razor sharp points, and they also are both very thin at the tip, you'll see. And for my painting style, that's really key, because I use a lot of thin paint, and a thinner tip is going to give me more control. It's going to let me be more precise with that thinned paint. So no matter what brush you use, if you want to hit those fine details, kind of look at the taper, what they call the taper on the brush, and make sure that you've got a nice tip on there. Now, there are some brush ranges. Let me see if I can find one that's a little bit more... I've got a whole bunch of shapes out right now, so this is good. So this brush is more of a liner. This is also a Da Vinci, but it's the Series 35, which is more of almost a liner brush. Now, I could use this as well. What happens, though, when you get a longer bristle on your brush, and it's very thin like this, is you don't have as much control, because the brush is more prone to bend. And so this can be very tricky, even though it might look like you could do eyeballs with it, and you could, but it would be more challenging to do so because the brush doesn't have as much strength when you get down to the tip, because it's very thin. Whereas this thick one here, it's the same length as this, but it's much more strong. It's going to spring back. You know, it's got a lot more strength because all these hairs are holding it in form. So when you are looking at buying brushes and you look at brush shapes, you know, technically this is just a longer version of this, but because this one is shorter, I have more control with it. This is about my perfect ratio of hitting micro detail. Like, this brush lets me do pretty much everything, the Da Vinci Maestro Series 10 size 1. But lately I have been playing with my Raphael more. I actually started using it because we were painting that big rock troll, and I wanted something thicker to deal with the thicker paint on the wet palette, but something that still had a good tip. And sometimes I find that the Raphael's tips are almost a little too fine, like they've got a little bit too much taper, but this one is a really nice balanced brush. So I don't know, mileage may vary maybe, because I know I worked with one of these before and was very frustrated at the way it was built, but maybe I just got a bad brush. So these are two brush brands that are actually very high end. They're grade 1 Kolinsky's. They're Kolinsky Sable, Red Sable, which is Kolinsky is a form of red sable, and sable is an animal. But grade 1 is the highest grade. It's the highest grade in construction, the highest grade in the quality of the hair, and it really does make a difference. Grade 1 and grade 2 are the only sables that are allowed to be called Kolinsky. And you'll see it stamped on the barrel because they're very proud of it. The Reaper Kolinskys are also a high quality brush. They're in that top 2 grades. The Winsor Newton Series 7 is in the top 2 grades. I'm not sure about Rosemary, but if they call themselves Kolinsky, they must be in the top 2 grades, but I'm not sure which grade they are. But these are all very good brushes. What you'll usually notice is that a grade 2 is a little bit less expensive, but they are really good. And if you've never owned a really good Kolinsky brush, those brushes like the Rosemary and the Reaper are really good to get in with, to try it out and see if you like it. The Rosemary, some people on here could probably make some recommendations as to sizes for miniature painting. With the Reaper, I always recommend the 0/5, the 05. That's the brush I used when I was staff painting for Reaper. I used it for years, and it was like my main workhorse. The 0/10 is also a good size. It's smaller, so you won't be able, to use it for really big stuff, but it for layering and detail work, the 0/10 is also good. Just checking on your chat here. Yes, Alpha Gigi, you made it. $800. Yeah, one brush Harlex. Yeah, when you get this sable, but you get it in really big brushes, like that's for oil painting. They use those for oil painting usually. Not for watercolor, tends to be the smaller ones. Actually, the brushes we all use for miniature painting are repurposed watercolor brushes. You could technically also use these for oils, but usually with the oil technique, the tradition is more large, less fine detail. Not that you can't do fine detail with oils, and some people do, but it's not the tradition, right? Whereas there is a definite fine detail watercolor tradition, which is why most of the brushes we use are repurposed watercolors. So, but yeah, you can find those big oil painting mops that are Kolinsky Sable that are $800 brushes. Oh yeah, size 30 or whatever the heck they are. So I thought I'd talk a bit about brush shape and size today, but do try a good brush once you are in you're experienced enough not to do things like leaving your brush nose down in paint water, which is a sure way to ruin it, no matter what it is. Once you're experienced enough not to do that and to rinse your brushes well and to not dip like too much of the brush in the paint so you get a bunch of paint stuck up near the ferrule, which is the silver part here, then do splurge. It will feel like splurging because it will be between $10 and $20 on a really good Kolinsky Sable, because it will level you up instantly, because you will find that you can hit the details that were so frustrating, you can now hit them with this brush. So even without brush control, it will level you up, and then it removes a frustration level, which I think is so important when you're starting this hobby, especially if you're not into the arts otherwise. If you have no artistic background, as many people who get in this hobby have, they're really not into art otherwise. They get into this because it seems like a fun creative hobby that lets them, actually get into an art form that they could learn and do well in. So to remove some frustration, do eventually pick up a good brush. You will be amazed. Hey, Achilles Blade, how's it going? Alrighty. Sweet. Yeah. Watching paint dry was my actual job when I was making the Reaper paint line. Alrighty, let's get on to this. So we're working with a slightly bigger model here. Obviously, he's not the same size as, say, a teensy Reaper model. So you totally can switch the size of your brush depending on how big of a thing you're working on. So I would definitely reach for a bigger brush when painting Rocky here. But little brushes for little figures. This is not always the case. It just tends to be. Let me see here. Let's get the glasses on, otherwise we can't see anything. Harlex sizes vary between lines, as you can see, in fact, because both of these are two different manufacturers, two different series, and they're both a size 1, and look at the difference. So, but that said, in general, you're not looking at anything over a 1, and brush sizes go in reverse. They'll go 1 to 0, and then they'll go like a 0/3, and then a 0/5, and then 0/10. And the aught numbers get bigger as the brush gets smaller. In general, some of them go to a 00 or a 000 instead of a 0/3. That would be like the Da Vinci Maestro, or not the Da Vinci Maestro, the Series 7, the Winsor & Newton Series 7. But in general, I believe that having around a 0 is useful, and then having like an aught 3 or aught 5 or an aught 10, but in some series the aught 10 is just way too tiny. So something like that, and those are pretty good sizes to start with. You can feel free to make your bigger brush a cheaper Taklon if you want. Taklon means plastic bristle. Those really inexpensive brushes that you see at craft stores and art stores are Taklons. Yeah, an aught 5 is like having a 00000. Right, Harlex, got it. Absolutely. So the Reaper Kolinsky aught 5 I like to recommend. If you're just getting into the hobby and you just want a decent Taklon brush to start off with for base coating, I actually like the size 0 Taklon from Reaper. I think it's a really good... It's a small enough tip brush that you can get into all the little details, but it is a large enough brush that you can still use it to base coat capes and stuff if you're working 28mm. Yeah, I actually like a little bit smaller brush as a workhorse, Nomad Zeke, or a bigger brush that is that has a finer tip. I mean, I do use this size 1 for almost everything. Actually, it doesn't matter, Brazard. Actually, I bring that up a lot. It is not the size of the brush. It is the tip. So I could use either of these for any model I have, and I would be fine. So it's preference at that point. And it's also that the shape of the brush and the size of the brush will work better with some different things. Like bigger brushes tend to work better with if you're using thicker paint, because the thicker your paint is, the faster it's going to dry on the brush. So if you try to use a small brush with thick paint, it's going to dry on there a lot faster. Whereas if you use a big brush with thick paint, it's going to have enough moisture and enough paint in there to keep it wet a little longer. So if you use thicker paint, like if you use a wet palette and you don't really thin your paint except for the water wicking up from the wet palette, use a bigger brush in general. But if you want to really fine details, then it comes down to thinning your paint a bit. And then you want to use thinner paint and a thinner brush. You want to make sure you have a fine tip, but it doesn't mean you have to switch off of your big brush, as long as your big brush has one of the tips, a tip like this Raphael. So, and this is really a thing that I only have seen on Raphael. A lot of the other brands that I've looked at with the bigger sizes, they don't taper like this. The Raphael has a very sharp taper toward the end, and it's something I've really only seen in the 8408 series from them. And that makes this a very versatile brush because it is bigger, so you can work with thicker paint, but it still has that super fine tip. So I can do eyeballs with this brush, no problem. I can do the finest detail that you'd ever want to do. With maybe the Da Vinci Maestro that I love could outperform this brush on micro detail, maybe. I'd have to test them. But yeah, it's not the size of the brush, it's the tip. So some great painters who regularly win international competitions only use bigger brushes, and no problem. And they win. So they're very good. Very, very, very good. And so what I really recommend is that you try a little bit of both. Once you have if you have the budget for it. I mean, don't expect a Taklon, like a cheap brush, to really perform at the level of a Kolinsky. So if you have Taklons and you're trying different sizes, don't expect that to be equivalent to the performance that you would get out of a really good bigger brush, because the big Taklon is going to lose its tip fast, whereas this Raphael is going to last for years if I take care of it. Okay, Francis. Well, the hybrid's a good step, and hopefully you're seeing some difference. Essentially, if you're seeing an improvement there in the tip and control of the paint, then you'll see another improvement if you switch to a whole Kolinsky, like a straight up Kolinsky. Yeah, that's it, Bandara. That's why you don't want to use a tiny, tiny brush, is that it doesn't have enough moisture in the hairs to keep your paint wet long enough to make a difference. Although you can, there are tricks. There are tricks. Let's just say there are tricks. I could use, I've got this triple aught Da Vinci just lying around from back when we got samples. This is a tiny brush. Tiny brush. See, tiny brush? Tiny brush. So you can make a tiny brush work if you do things like this. If you load it up with water, gently squeeze it out so it still has a lot of water in it, but it comes to that fine, fine point still. Then load it with paint. And essentially what you're doing is you're preloading your barrel with a bit of moisture and that will help your paint stay wet longer and not dry on the brush. It still may not work for super arid climates, but it does work for your average climate. In fact, that's what I do every time I paint these days is I no longer use paper towels or my pants or anything. Used to use my pants all the time to dry off my brush. But these days, because I broke myself up brush licking years ago, I load up my brush and I use my fingers. I just squeeze it out like so. I've just gotten used to that. That's a habit for me now. And that does retain a tiny bit of moisture in the brush. So I find that my paint stays wet longer and just generally comes off my brush well. So... if you do that, Francis, then you're either getting too much paint on your brush, probably getting too much paint on your brush. I mean, you're going to get a little bit when you're thinning your paint. You are going to get a little bit of paint that's going to wick up there. The best thing you can do is to not dip your brush into your paint so far. And to use an older, crappier brush when you're mixing up your paint. Because when you're mixing up your paint with water, if you're using a well palette, that you're going to accidentally get a lot of paint up into the ferrule. So let's see here. Let's get this. I've bored David. I've bored David out of the room. So when you load your brush, here, let me get this. Let me get somewhere up here. There. So see, I've loaded my brush, but look at where it is. It's not even halfway up the brush, right? That's the most. Yeah, sorry, Strange. The ferrule is this silvery thing. Or a brassy thing, depending on what brush brand. But I'm only loading my brush this far. And then I'm dabbing most of the paint off. So if this paint is really, really thin, capillary action is still going to pull it up here, but not a ton. And the other thing you can do to get around that is, I'll usually paint, and then I'll rinse out my brush very, very often. Nomad Zeke, probably not, because I don't enjoy that sort of painting. Like, I really, really don't. I learned a long time ago that speed painting is not my friend. Like, I really don't enjoy it. My joyfulness in this hobby is being able to spend, to work slowly and spend a lot of time to really make a model come to life. And so it gives me no pleasure. Like, I could paint a Conjura in 5 days and I would hate it. I just wouldn't enjoy myself at all. So the answer is no, I would never do that, because then I just have a model that I hated, that I spent 5 days hating the process on. Everybody got their own way to do things, I guess, and I like to work slow and really enjoy the model as I paint it. Let's see here. Yeah, don't dip deep into the paint. The brushes are dead. Don't throw them out. Yeah, you can resurface it. Pixel's got a point. I mean, you can always resurface it, although I've got, plenty of basic materials that work in that sort of way, so... let's see here. Rosard, if you've got a crappy, like I've got a crappy old flat, and I use that for mixing, it mixes everything a lot faster than a toothpick or the butt end of a brush will. I get impatient. I want my paint good now, so I don't use a toothpick because it takes a very long time to get the paint mixed adequately together. I find that a brush is a lot more effective. Yep, David's like, no. David actually said he was only staying for the first half hour. He just wanted to, he's got a meeting, so he has to go, he had to charge up his computer. Strange, actually, if you look at, like, last week's shows, when I was painting Rock Troll and a bit of Giant, I actually was using a wet palette for this entire process. My preference is the well, because I use a lot of thin paint, and that means I need to control the consistency on it. A wet palette, the paint is going to get compromised by water wicking up from the sponge or being wicked back down through it. So that means that I don't like the wet palette when I'm thinning my paint a lot, because it's essentially going to change my paint consistency. And if I want my paint at just such a consistency so that I can blend smoothly, for example, I find that very difficult to do on the wet palette. And if you are a wet palette user and are having trouble with smooth blending, 10-to-1, it's paint consistency that is your devil. Try a well palette for it, and you may find you have better mileage. I'm going to start actually painting this thing while we talk, since I've got a lot of questions today. Lots of... well palette. So, okay, these wells are very small. As you can see, I can put my finger in one, and it's just a little larger. What this does is control your fluid to surface ratio. So your surface area is what's going to cause evaporation, and it's going to change your paint consistency, right? As your paint evaporates, it dries out. But if you're using very thin paint, you've got a lot of water in your mixes, essentially you're getting a nice deep well, and you're getting relatively little surface area. So your paint on a well palette will stay at the consistency you mix it to for a lot longer. If you live in a drier climate, build deeper puddles, and if you live in a really wet climate, you may be able to get away with less paint. I usually build between 6 and 8 drops of paint plus water. So for me, it's a nice big puddle, and it stays at exactly the consistency I want for a very long time. I do a lot of really good blending and fine detail that requires my paint to be at a just so consistency to get the effect I want. And so for me, I get more mileage out of the well palette. I do make myself use the wet palette every once in a while. I find that it loosens up my painting style a lot, and I believe that everybody should use both. I really do believe that you should try both. You should learn about the advantages of each, for sure, so that you're not just using it. Like I said, it's the wet palette tends to be better with thicker paint. It encourages a looser style. Usually, most people I know who are wet palette painters paint with bigger brushes because they are using thicker paint. It's really good for texture work and lighting work and stuff that you're trying to get down like kind of a sketch first. What the well palette is good for is precision. So it depends. If you're a control freak like me, you could do a lot of your painting with the well palette. But I just found over the years, I started with the well palette. I tried the wet palette. The wet palette really frustrated me at first. I now know a lot more about how to use it. I took a seminar with Sergio Calvo Rubio, the Spanish painter, a couple years ago. And finally, I managed to understand then why the wet palette is useful and in what circumstances. But up to that point, I had tried to paint with it several times, and I just hated it. And there are people who have tried the well palette and just hate it. But the key with the wet palette, thicker paint. Key with the well palette, thinner paint. So I am a weirdo because I know a lot of painters use the wet palette, but I actually think I get better results for my style with the well. And so it's all about style. It's all about, try it, see if it works for you. I'm a very open-minded painter on the subject of all supplies. There are supplies that work for me that I know would not work as well for other people. That's why I think everybody should try everything. And also, even if you try something early in your painting life, go back to it. Like I said, the first time I tried a wet palette, first couple times I tried to make myself use a wet palette, I hated it. But now I've gotten to the point where I understand it and I like it a lot better and I see what it's good at. And really that's the thing. And then that can change your entire painting style, which one you enjoy the most, right? Which one you tend to use for various things. So keep that in mind also. And Justin hasn't poked me yet, but I am supposed to remind you guys that we're actually really close to, I think we're only 17 subs away from our sub goal for the next AMA and giveaway.
Yes.
Yes. So, let's see, what have I got? Yeah, Sergio is very good. Sergio is very good. He uses thick paint exclusively, and in partner with airbrush. So his style is very unusual, Nomad Zeke. If you ever get a chance to take a class with him, I think he explains light on surfaces better than almost any other painter that I've ever had the luck to work with. So, Reaper paints are more fluid than most, but, I mean, when I say use thicker paints on the wet palette, I'm not talking across brand. I'm just talking about whether you're thinning it out of the bottle. That said, thick paint, like the tube paints from Scale 75, or Scale 75 itself, or Vallejo, do work well on a wet palette, because otherwise you have to throw so much water into them on the well palette. And that's why Reaper is more fluid, by the way, because I'm a well palette painter, and I created the Reaper line. And so for me, I was really frustrated at the amount of water I had to throw into Vallejo to make it work. Because I used to paint with Vallejo a lot back in the day before Master Series was made. And so I wanted a paint that was more fluid out of the bottle, that would be essentially require less work out of the bottle to get to the level where I felt it was useful. AMA, ask me anything. Ask Ann anything, actually. I guess would be AAA. AAA, Harlex. We do, when we get to a certain number of subs, 60, that's enough essentially for us to do a giveaway, but we also like to do just a basic Q&A. So people put up questions in the Reaper Discord under Ann AMA and in that channel, and I go through as many of those questions as I can on the AMA day, and we do giveaways. Yeah. All right, 16 now. Thank you. Yes, if I missed a sub, I'm sorry. There's so much talking that I'm trying to keep up with. Browsard, yeah, it could be any number of reasons that you find you get better detail with a larger brush. It probably has to do with your paint consistency and the tip on the brush, because it's just physics. It's fluid dynamics. It's all there's always an answer. You'd have to experiment with your different paint consistencies and see, but in general, a smaller or thinner brush is going to require you to thin your paint more. So if you are using thicker paints, you will be very dissatisfied with using smaller brushes, in general. Okay, trying to catch up with everybody. Sorry, many messages. And now my computer doesn't want to scroll. Oh, hold on. Could be dog emergency. Yeah, crap. Okay, everybody who knows my dog knows that I have to rush her outside right now. Everybody ad lib.
Don't worry, I got it. How is everyone? Yes, Dave, ad lib. I don't honestly genuinely paint too often, Francis, but when I do, I have actually painted probably more GW than anything else at this point. But I do paint it with Reaper paint, I will say that. Except for the washes. I use the GW washes. Um that's don't make it weird, Dave. Don't make it weird. But yeah, it looks as if Dave has showed up to entertain us today as well. I actually have been coordinating here with Gurgi. I assume Gurgi is in chat. I'm not entirely certain. And I believe he is. He's got a special birthday coming up at the end of the month. And oh, look, there's Dave with the stubs. Thank you, Dave. That's 10, guys. That's 10 subs. You know what that means? It means we're 7 away. But also, Gurgi has been. I've been working with him on getting some special goodies going. He wanted to gift a bunch of giveaway stuff for his birthday, guys, and we will be giving those away on Fridays. Also, I sent you some more messages on Discord, Gurgi. If you had not gotten a chance to read them, uh, they might they they might make the process a little easier. So, has anyone here actually gotten their pre-ordered their ReaperCon boxes yet? Because if I'm not mistaken, those did go up for pre-order, right? Because I know stuff changes, so they didn't go away, did they? Yeah, I need to make a command to remind people that those are up for pre-order now, and that if you're interested, click the link and go check it out. Because I know there's plenty of people that filter in and out randomly, and they may remember or not or whatever, right? Oh, awesome. All right, thank you, Gergie. I reached out to the internet department to make sure that they kind of know what they're looking for when they see it. I didn't get struck by. You know what? We haven't had a chance to talk about this. I wanted to apologize to the 94 people still watching. Basically, an empty pallet at this point, listening to me drone on. I want to apologize for us not having a Reaper live last week. That is 100% my fault, and is no one else's. So, thank you guys for hopping in Discord. I thank John for kind of talking to the people who hopped into Discord. That was awesome. I tried to get in Discord myself to kind of talk to you guys, but it turns out T-Mobile is also having issues because I couldn't talk to anyone. I didn't have signal. So
No, we're not. We're gonna go right back. All right, I'm back. Yay! Kiri, settle. Dog, settle. Settle, dog. Come on. Settle down. Good girl. Let's finish the stream. Oh boy. All right, let me see here. So many things. Let's see here. I don't want to come tow anybody's car. Hee 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 hee. All right. Yeah, Pixel, for sure. If you were using a well palette, it can be frustrating to use Vallejo on that. So yeah, it very much. It's just, it depends on it's really paint viscosity. But the thing is, Pixel, if you start to use thinner paint, if you start to really thin your paint a lot, then you may find that you have more difficulty with the wet palette. And in that case, it's not you or the paint. It's just, a well palette's a little bit better for really thin paint. So
unless it's Dave, then it is him.
Alrighty, trying to catch up with the chat. Sorry guys, Kiri had her little yeah, oh Dave, sorry, did Justin explain my dog emergency? Kiri did not have her full yeah, this morning, so she decided to interrupt my stream. It happens. Sadly. Dave, you are swearing in chat. Who gave you permission? Oh wait, you're Dave. You can do anything. Never mind. Alrighty. Yay, adlib. Oh, wow. And Dave with the sub bomb. Amazing. I missed so much. Yeah. Reaper Dave with the love, everybody. Give love back. Alrighty. And I'm looking. Wow, you guys were so chatty while I was gone. I'm like, whoa. I'm just gonna scroll to the end. Ah, there we go. Alright, now I'm back, guys. You can stop ad-libbing. Yeah, exactly, Tristonoma. Mama, I just been outside. I can't settle down. Yeah, and she still didn't do everything. So now I'm like, oh no. no twice. Kiri, she got a big smile on her face now though. Good girl. All right, so there's Margaret with the Dave face. Excellent. All right, let's get back to this Rocky thing. Let's actually get some paint on the NMM part of this. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So, if you want any medium yellowish brown is good for NMM gold. Lately, I tend to like rich leather, which actually there's a story behind this name. The reason is that Jessica Rich is the one who suggested this color, and she actually uses it for a lot of NMM. So this particular color. So I essentially color matched her mix that she uses, and so that's why this is such a good NMM color. It's actually meant to be a good NMM color, believe it or not. Sweet. All right, well, let's, I tend to start, middle. I don't start with my darkest shadow on NMM, but I do start darker. I find that if I start with, the mid-tone, it gets too mustardy and yellow too fast. So we're going to use rich leather for our base on these straps. Now, for bronze, you may actually want things to go a little bit more green, in which case you may want to mix a little bit of, say, walnut into this. Just a tiny tad. I almost would just put some... I guess I could use some black and brown and mix it in. Essentially, if you mix any yellowish color, if you mix a color that's heavy and black in, you get a more greenish tone. And so if you wanted this to actually go bronze with these bands around the chest, then I would go a little darker and greener. You could also even add a little bit of green. If you really wanted to go really green with it, you could do that. Sweet. Dave got us almost to our goal, didn't he, Justin? I'm going to just add a little bit of olive green to this.
Yeah, we're actually 7 away.
All right. Sweet. Thanks, Dave. That's awesome. pretty soon we can do. I'll have to figure out now what I want the giveaway to be. I was kind of thinking something dragony or gianty. All right, get some paint things here. So I added a little bit of troll hide, which is the olive green that I actually had here on my table, and made a bit of a greenish brown. If you want to start with bronze, I find this is really a good call, and most of the time the straps on a chest are going to be brass or bronze anyway, so they're going to corrode green. That's why you want a greenish color to start. That said, you can see this is still really a brown. It's not an olive green at all. So, Daphne, I kind of like to give a few... Like, maybe for our big giveaway that we're going to go toward. Wow, Gurgi just hit it. Thanks, Gurgi. Now I really need to figure out what I'm doing for the giveaway. NMM Harlex is painting gold using shades of brown and yellow and white instead of using metallic paint. So it is... I don't want to say fashionable, but it's what I was doing with these gold coins down here. This is not metallic gold paint. So... NMM is a technique that got popular, I want to say back in the 90s for miniature painting. Obviously, it's been used in comic books and in canvas paintings for a very long time, since, metallic paints didn't really exist, back in the Renaissance, but they were still painting things like, silver goblets, putting them in portraits and things. The Dutch actually are especially good. Their old masters are especially good at NMM. They use some amazing realistic crystal, silver, and gilt effects. And whenever I go to an art gallery, I'm wowed. But this was adopted for use by the miniatures painting community. And part of the reason, I think the French, one of the European areas kind of pioneered it a little bit. Confrontation was famous for it, that old range from Rackham. But they did it partially because, one, it was an art style, right, that wasn't being used, and two, it photos really well. So if you are a miniature painting company and you want your models to look just freaking amazing when you photo them, NMM photographs a lot better than metallics do, because metallics are always getting kind of like, you can't control the lighting very well, right? It's going to be the highlights and shadows that it picks up is going to be the light, based on the light around the area that you're photographing it in, right? In your soft box or in your studio or whatever you're doing. So you can't really control highlights and shadows with metallics, or it's a lot harder to do so. And so it doesn't photo very well. And you often lose a lot of the subtlety with metallics. They're just really hard to photograph. So NMM, non-metallic metal, pretty much got very popular, and you'll see a lot of companies just don't use anything else for their studio models.
Also, Miss Ann, I don't know if you got it already, but Gurgi hit us with a 7 gift bomb.
Yeah, I know. So now I have to really decide what the giveaway is. Thanks, Gurgi.
Yes, and
Thanks, Gurgi.
he is also going to be gifting out. I think I said this earlier, but I didn't know if I had updated you on it. But he's going to be giving away stuff every Friday on the show now.
Yeah, so
until the
Fridays
end
will be
of
exciting.
July.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yes, it's for his 50th birthday.
Oh,
so
congrats, Gurgi.
yeah,
That's
so if everyone
fantastic.
could wish Gurgi a happy birthday in chat, that would be awesome.
Yay. Yay for summer birthdays. I had mine in June. So
I like my September birthday.
You like it? Yeah, well, because the weather's like finally starting to break a bit in Texas. September's a pretty nice month. You still get the warmth, but you don't get quite as nasty hot.
Oh, thank you for the bits, Numbat. Holy crap, yeah.
Dang. All sorts of... And many happy birthdays to Gurgi in the chat. There we go. Yay! Good deal. I'm giving my dog the side eye because seriously, she's giving me that look like maybe I'm not empty. I'm like, no, please hold out until I at least get some shadows and highlights down on this dog. In fact, you can't sadly you cannot squeeze your dog out like a tube of toothpaste. So you are at the mercy. I'm at the mercy of the morning Kiri. Yes, empty. When the Kiri is empty, everybody is happy. You wish they had a gauge, right? I make fun of my old dog. I should give her a break. She's 12 and a half, and for a big dog, that's a good age. So we are happy to still have her at this point. And she gets a lot of leeway, latitude. on her various. She really doesn't have a lot of issues other than that. No pool party. What breed? Harlex, I have a Shiloh Shepherd, which is a rare breed that's based strongly on the German Shepherd. Kiri looks like... I wonder if I have a Kiri picture. Wait. There were Kiri pictures up on the Discord, but that was a long time ago, so nobody can probably get them. I know I have a good Kiri picture, though. Although this is young Kiri. Hold on. Let me get to my all photos thing and get a good Kiri picture up. There we go. Okay, so this is a much younger Kiri. It's my favorite photo of her. This is my Kiri. That was winter in Texas. Back when we actually still got snow. We haven't gotten one. But that's my Kier. And then I have a very cute picture of young Kiri smiling at the camera. There's my cute Kiri. So there she is. So she's a smooth coat. Most Shilohs are actually plush coat, like our boy Leo. That's Leo. That's me with boy Leo back when I was still in Texas. And so yeah, Leo was our champion. We actually showed and we actually bred for a little while. But I am past that point now, at least for the foreseeable future. But yeah, Shilohs are nice dogs. They're kind of like, we went for a Shiloh because they have slightly better health than the traditional German Shepherd, and they're also a little bit lower energy, lower drive. You can find German Shepherds that are lower energy if you find somebody who's breeding that sort of Shepherd, but it's harder to find, especially allied with good health. So we went for the Shiloh, and yeah, got involved enough in the breed to... I'm on the national board for our breed club, so I'm still very involved with the breed, even though I'm not breeding. We have a lot of health initiatives that I really support, and I think more purebred dogs should be more health focused. So for now, they get a portion of my spare time. Yeah, larger, fluffier, calmer. Although Kiri, as I said, is a smooth coat, so not. And the fluffy does exist in the German Shepherd breed. Long-haired German Shepherds are a thing. They weren't allowed in the show ring in Germany for many, many decades, but Germany reversed that decision, I think, last decade in the 90s, and started.
Why weren't they allowed?
Because dog breeders are silly and purist and tend to not think about their gene pool and to think about their aesthetic. Sorry, was that my outside voice? But it is true. I mean, there was no reason. They have the same pedigrees. They just didn't like the long coat. It wasn't a working coat or something. I don't know. Which is ridiculous because there are so many long-haired herding breeds. It's not even funny. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask a German and they'd give you a more involved answer. But they decided eventually that they needed or wanted the health from being able to use that gene pool. And so they allowed them into the ring again. Yeah, I think it was back, I don't remember if it was in the aughts or the 90s, Pixel. The thing is, I just don't know how long ago that was that they allowed them. Might have been the aughts, or the 90s. I think it was the aughts. You're right, that's 2 decades ago. It's because it's 2020. I keep forgetting. I'm in denial. Humor me. Yeah, I love rough collies, Red Lynx. I wanted a collie so badly when I was a kid, and my parents refused to get me a collie. They got a Sheltie instead, so close enough. Close enough. And I still really love the Sheltie breed, but I've always, when I was training my Sheltie, I had a 4-H dog training project when I was a kid, and so I took my Sheltie in that, and there was a girl with a German Shepherd that I absolutely fell in love with, and so that started my kind of romance with Shepherds. And that's what led to me eventually getting into Shilohs. So I still do love collies, though. Collies of all sorts and Shelties and border collies. The herding breeds are where my love is at. I just love the intelligence and trainability that comes with herding breeds. And the people focus, the natural people focus.
You know what dog breed I've always wanted?
What dog breed?
An English Bulldog.
Really? Oh, the health on them, though, Justin. The health on them.
I know, and that's between that and the... because of the obviously the health is bred there, right? Because of the practices.
Yeah.
And I can't ethically get one, even though they're my kind of dog. You know, they lay around all the time. And
you could look for a healthier, like a breeder that breeds healthier bulldogs. But then that's the thing is that people actually encourage that sort of thing because they like the smooshed face, right? And the big build. But those are the things that are kind of wrecking the bulldog. I mean,
Absolutely.
They're also one of the breeds that's highest for hip dysplasia. Did you know?
Yeah, I did not know that actually.
Yeah.
Not that aspect. I knew the other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
All
after
right.
seeing Weeby's pugs, I mean, those things are adorable too. To be fair.
He has, and Weeby knows. I mean, he also is an ex-dog breeder. He used to breed Malamutes, so he's aware of what a healthier pug looks like, and I think his dogs have had pretty good health. Anyway, we should go back to painting as Harlex is nicely reminding us. So yeah, the key with NMM is that you have to have specific placements of highlight and shadow, and you need to bring up your highlights to pure white. You're essentially trying to create an illusion, Harlex, that this thing that you're painting with flat paint is actually shiny. There are two qualities of metal that you're trying to replicate. One is the fact that it's shiny, and the other is the fact that it's reflective. And these are two qualities that matte paint do not have. So those are your illusion goals. That's essentially that you have to figure out how to do highlights and shadows. I'm just doing a bit of lining here, just to set up. You have to figure out how to do highlights and shadows in a way that mimics that. And it's what I call a conceptual technique in that it's purely how you think about it. It's not a mechanical technique like layering or blending or doing a wash or glazing. So it takes a lot longer sometimes to wrap your head around because you have to start thinking about how does light fall on a surface and how does it reflect, right? And trying to simplify that for the surface that you're working on. So color choice is also important with gold NMM, but not as important as you'd think. All right, so just doing a little lining to tighten up all these little bands. I got a little bit outside of the lines, so I grabbed some walnut to do a dark line wherever the metal surface meets the wood. It helps me to set all these areas apart from each other. It also makes it easier to show where the chest is coming together, to put a dark line there. And you can see how my thin brush is working with me on this, although I do have a lot of paint on it, relatively speaking, since I'm going fast. Oh, it doesn't, I think Victoria Lamb has bearded collies. They're nice dogs. Victoria Lamb being Victoria Miniatures, and also a Golden Demon winning Australian miniature painter. Though she does more sculpting than painting now. So we got our keyhole filled in. You also want to fill in that little keyhole because it would be dark, right? Okay, so let's see. We're going to have... Now we also need to remember we've got a rocky arm up here. And that's going to socket in there. So if we look at this right away, you guys can see this. There's light falling on this surface. Can you see it? So you see that this is darker and this is lighter. And I'm essentially angling it so that you can see the angle of the NMM. So you can also see that the top of this band is lighter. You can't really see it, but there probably would be a slight highlight down here. Although the top lid here actually overlaps the bottom lid, so maybe not. Maybe our brightest highlight's going to be up here. And we're not going to really get a secondary highlight here on the lower lip. There's definitely a shadow underneath the band here on these. The studs are going to pick up the light. This stud's going to pick up the light. So what you're doing is you're kind of looking at where your light falls, and that's where your highest highlights are going to be. So let's get some pure white and just map those in. Sometimes that's the easy way to do it. And how you do it is up to you. Some people map in the shadows first. But I find that using real thinned white to kind of just very gently and lightly map in your highlights lets you kind of see if it looks right. Oh, I think Kiri might have a problem again. Dang it, dog. This would be a record if there's twice in one stream. Yeah, she's definitely not looking happy. See, she knows she's not supposed to, go now, and so she's trying to, hold it in, but she has this very, kind of sad look on her face that says, Mama, I need an out. So, I'm pretty much going to put a highlight right there, because and I'm using just kind of a long streak And the reason, whether I do what brushstroke I use here is gonna create a different illusion. For this is not gonna be a super shiny brass, right? It's not gonna be mirror bright necessarily. It's probably gonna be a bit burnished or a bit verdigris. You know, it's gonna have corrosion on it, stuff like that probably. Because it's an old treasure chest. It's just not. I don't think Rocky just bought a brand new treasure chest. Although he could have, I guess. He is a baby dragon, so maybe he's building his treasure chest model collection. But I decided to go with more of a burnished look and not a shiny mirror shiny metal. And so if I was going mirror shiny, I actually would have done the brush stroke across like this because I'd want to do like a very sharp horizon line between my highlight and my shadow. Doing it like this means that I'm doing more of a blended style. So what that says is it's not chrome. You know, it's not super bright. It's not what we call sky earth NMM, where you're really emphasizing the horizon line. And instead, you're kind of doing a little bit of fuzzed in highlight. Not as strong. So by trailing off my brush strokes here, I can create kind of a rough blended effect. And then when I put my shadow in, it'll look more right. Yeah, so, all right, so I've got my highlight. This is where, now, let's talk about light angle. If I'm here looking at Rocky's treasure, and he's very annoyed at me, let me get this at the right angle. There we go. So if I'm here and I'm looking down, you're going to notice right away that the area that's highlighted is pointed toward my eyes. Like, I'm pretty much looking at this model from here, and so if you're looking at a surface, it's like a reflector. It's like a mirror. Imagine trying to shine the light of a mirror into somebody's eyes. So you're tilting the mirror, and if you tilt it too far up, it's going to reflect toward the sky. And if you tilt it too far out, it's going to reflect on the wall. But if you want to hit their eyes, then you want it to reflect right at that. So we're essentially envisioning a viewpoint up here, and we're putting our highlight exactly where that light would reflect up into the eyes of the person looking at it. In this case, us. Right under or very near to your highest highlight, which is what this is going to be the big bounce point where the light is, you're going to put a dark shadow, and you want it to be dark. So I'm actually going to thin down some walnut to a very watery level for layering. So this is a very watery level here. Very, very watery. See it? There. And then I'm going to refill, rinse out my brush, reload, because you always want to have control over the paint. And when you start adding this much water to the paint, if you use a fully loaded brush, you will not have control. And I'm going to put in a shadow area. That's a little bit too much even. Sometimes you really have to unload your brush. A lot of people don't, and sometimes that's why they have very mixed results with layering. I need to be able to draw a nice thin line. See those thin lines on my nail. All right, so now I'm better. Now I'm not going to make a blurf like I did there. So I'm going to do a dark shadow underneath that high highlight. And it is the dark and the light together that create the illusion of shininess. If you don't have a dark shadow under your bright highlight, it's much more difficult to make something look shiny. And if you don't have a very bright highlight, then that's also very difficult. So it's these two things. It's the dark next to the light, and it's also going to be taking this highlight up to pure white. So I've got a shadow there. When you've got a band like this, you're more likely to see the shadow falling here right under that top level. So let's map in that highlight, and I'll show you guys an example. Now here, this surface also has a curve to it, right? But it's an angle. So this top part of the band is going to be reflecting upwards. So I'm going to be painting it light eventually. And then this part, the flat part of the band, is going to be reflecting out on your stomach or on your legs or wherever you're standing. So this little edge is actually where the light catches and reflects towards your eyes. So this is where you put your little white highlight. And this lip, there would normally be another one right here if these two were flush, but this lower chest actually is a little recessed under this, so you would not get a secondary highlight here. You would get a highlight here. You would get a highlight here. And we're good. All right, so that's your highest highlight. Yeah, pretty much, like, this is what a good brush is for, though. Good brush and thin paint let you draw these tiny little lines. Tiny little lines like I've got on my fingernail. Like, that is what a good brush will do for you. It will enable you to draw super, super thin, tiny lines. And that opens up so many possibilities to you. You do, Mathophile, but I'm slowly working it because at that point I need to be introducing my golden colors as well. So right now I'm just roughing in. You gotta rough in first. Sometimes I will do shadow first, and then I'll bring all my highlights up slowly, and pure white will be the last one I do. But because I want you guys to kind of see the process, I'm deconstructing it a bit. All right, so right under that bright highlight is a band of shadow. It's usually pretty thin. So it's going to be under all of these little highlights, including this one. And there's also going to be a shadow pretty dark underneath this little rivet. So let's see. So, all right. So as an example, let's see if I can make it do it. There we go. So on this brush, you can see, although it's difficult here, there we go. So if you look at the ferrule on the silver part, you see that the top is lighter because the light is on it, but the brightest highlight is actually one that's angling toward the camera. And then right under that, do you see the dark shadow? And then on the underside, do you see my skin tone that I'm reflecting back up at it? That is the basic of NMM. Right there is highlight, shadow, and reflected light. And then, you know, the top surface of the brush is lighter. So you can like remind yourself of this anytime you want to by using various metal things and creating an environment where you can see how they work. So that's what we're doing on this long, thin area, is we are bringing in a dark shadow under our highlight for contrast. The closer and tighter your shadow is, the more shiny the surface is going to look. So if I really want this to look burnished like it is up here, I actually need to diffuse my shadow a bit and probably not make it as dark so that I can still get a good effect and not a super shiny effect. And then we want to bring up, I don't know how much more time we're going to have, given Kiri, given everything. So I'm going to essentially mix up a highlight color so I can start to show you guys what I'm doing. I'm actually going to take rich leather, about 3 drops. I'm going to throw some lantern yellow into it, and a tiny, probably 2 drops of lantern yellow. And 1 drop of pure white. I'm going to see what that makes. Sometimes I like to custom mix my, you can of course use the NMM Gold Triad, in which case now is the time to get out your NMM Gold. As our 93, 01, 02, and 03 are the item numbers for our NMM Gold Triad. But sometimes I just like to mix it. So I'm mixing a mustardy color. Also, since I'm going for bronze and not so much gold, I'm not going quite as yellow. I'm going a little more muted with my mid-tone here. So it's not going to be as yellow as our gold base. Hey there, Diesel. What's up? Good deal, Harlex. I hope you I hope you have get good mileage out of it. Remember, it really excels when you're using thin paint and you have to hit fine details. So when you have to hit fine details, add a little more water to your paint. Load it up just a bit. And often I will test it. Like I will load it up, unload it, and then see on my palette or on my fingernail what sort of line I can draw. And if I see a big puddle of paint, you've got too much paint on the brush, unload it a lot before you can do stuff with it. Yes, forbidden mustard. Exactly. Yeah, you want mustard. I mean, gold. You at least want a yellowish brown. And the more muted and the less bright your yellowish brown is, the less it'll look like gold, the more it's going to look like brass or bronze. Brass gets very green. So now we're going to do an under reflection. So we're going to bring up a highlight that is not white. And we're going to have that on the underside of the surfaces. This is more of a mid-tone. So I just want to essentially catch the light on the surface. There's going to be a lot of light reflecting upward from this gold here, all of this treasure pile. So I probably will bring up my under reflection pretty high. Here we're only going to get reflected light because we won't have our bright highlight necessarily since this is overhanging. We could put our bright highlight down a little bit more, but it would look a little odd. And normally I would use a lot thinner paint for this and get a better blend. I want to say that right out. But I'm going fast because we're getting to the end of the stream. So I gotta work it. faster. So this is very much a block and not a smooth blending show, sadly. Ah. So we got a little bit of light here, because if you think about it, this edge is catching the light, right? So it is going to definitely reflect up at the bottom of this band here. Just kind of get used to thinking about each surface and asking yourself how it would reflect. Also, this entire top of this area is going to have light on it. I'm not going to use a pure white. I actually mixed a little bit of my yellow, my mustard, with the pure white. And if I find that that is too overwhelming, then I might damp it down a bit, but I'll block it in pretty bright. And then I can actually come up and maybe put a little bit extra here. The brighter you bring up your main highlight, the more convincing it's going to be. So now that's starting to, the top band is starting to like have the illusion of being metal at this point. I still have to bring up my reflections a bit more. The brighter you bring up the reflection now, the more convincing it will get. And again, I've got a lot of paint on my brush. I'm going real fast. Normally it would take a lot more time with this and then blending it. You don't have to have good blending skills to start thinking about things like NMM. Just be aware that the better you can blend, the better results you will probably get if you're trying to go for a smooth or burnished surface. I need to bring up the highlight up here as well. Because the top of the chest would be catching a bunch of light. I would not make it pure white, but I'll make it lighter. So now you can really see how this is starting to look shiny and reflective. So if you're troubleshooting your NMM, ask yourself where your light source is, and if you're nailing exactly where your brightest light source should be, make sure you've got a shadow under it, and then make sure you've got your under reflections. A lot of people use, like when they're trying to paint steel NMM, it ends up looking like stone. It doesn't look like metal, and that almost always is that they're forgetting the shading or the reflection. They're painting the area with yellows and browns and hoping that it'll turn out like gold, or they're painting it with grays and black and white and hoping it'll turn out like steel. But because the light isn't correct, it doesn't read correctly. Let's see here. Well, this is really, like, if any of you have this Rocky, like, feel free to, like, follow along. Anybody, this is one of the simpler. I've got a model with a nice vertical sword or two that I want to use to show you guys simple steel NMM on a sword. It follows these rules exactly, but starting with an angled blade is actually the easiest beginning NMM exercise that you could do, most likely. You can make it as complicated as you like, but for starting, that would be a good one. This one is a nice topic to practice your NMM because it's got both curved and straight surfaces. And it's got surfaces like facing upward and facing outward. So it gives your brain a little bit more of workout to think about where the light's coming from. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to just put the paint where I put it. Well, you can certainly, and then you'll figure out, oh yeah, okay, it looks right. But try to think about why it looks right. Exercise your mind a bit, because it's that's the key to being able to do NMM everywhere, is learning how to think about it. It very much is a conceptual technique. Once you figure out that trick of imagining how light reflects, that's when it really clicks in your head and you can do anything. The movies are good for this because of like fantasy movies. If you look at a lot, you're going to find yourself looking at a lot of metal when you start really studying NMM, like in your environment. Renaissance fairs are great. Take some reference photos in like the booths that have swords and armor, especially if they're like out under the sun, in the sky, and there's trees around. That can give you good references, because on steel, a lot of the time, these under reflections or the shadows, they're both going to have color in them, right? Because the reflections you're not just in a cave with firelight. You're you're outside under the sky with green trees or brown earth or whatever, and silver or steel is going to reflect all those colors more than gold will. Gold will reflect a bit. Like over here, we would definitely put some red in the reflections because of Rocky. Yeah, do not pick a detail covered Velandar. Do not pick a detail covered model to try NMM. Like prismatic blade, like crystal. You mean Nomad Zeke? By prismatic. If so, I would do it like I did the gemstones on the troll. If you watched that episode. Whenever you start getting more like a translucent metal, it stops acting like metal, and it begins acting like a gemstone. Yeah, Harlex actually absolutely got it. That is exactly the right answer. So, recommend. I will be working more on that troll. We will be doing more crystals. But the first episode I did, where I was working mostly on one crystal and showing you guys each stage of the process, that would probably be the one that you want to grab if you're trying to do a prismatic blade. Alrighty. Now, the more white I get in my mix for these under reflections, the more water I have to mix into it, because white is the most opaque color. Ooh, we're getting there, aren't we? Well, then you would glaze colors, Nomad Zeke, then. You probably would want to glaze some rainbowy colors into the shadows, and you want to leave the midtones steel, likely, for it to read as steel. But, like, not the darkest shadow, but the next up, like in here, is where you'd start mixing a little bit of colors. You might also want to use a little bit of different colors for some of your highlights, but still use white for your purest highlight. When you get down to that, then you get down to things that, like, competition level painters are trying to do, and they're trying to work out how to do it because there are no rules. It varies by the model. Although you just gave me a great idea for my Monster Hunter World Kirin armor model, because it'd be cool to do that in a color shifting NMM. I would be ready to just, like, strangle myself by the end of it, probably. So now I'm adding much brighter highlights. Still not pure white. You never go up on your under reflections. You never go up as high as your highest highlight. But you do want to pick up some light from the environment. I'm just doing some quick... Again, I would be blending this in a lot more. But you can create decent NMM effects without perfect blending. So if I wanted to blend this in more, I'd be using thinner paint. But I'd be using a lot of the same brushstroke. Haven't paid any attention to this thing yet, so let's do that. Kind of have a couple of sections here. Boom, boom. Because this has a latch. Shiny. I'm using true metallic metals. Yeah, I mean, TMM is, I just need a model for it, really. Maybe I'll do it on the giant. I was going to do NMM on him, but I could do true metallics. He's big enough. I really only like true metallics on larger models, usually. I find that it's really hard, because a lot of metallic details on 28mm models are going to be edging on armor and stuff. And on a lot of models, that's very small areas. And true metallics can be very difficult to make look really good on small areas. And NMM is nicer for those little tiny details because you can do such fine lines and control where the highlights are in the shadows. So essentially it makes the details pop out better, especially on little fine stuff like jewelry or filigree or edging on armor. I think that NMM wins hands down on that stuff. But something large like the Fire Giant King, I could go metals with and do shaded metallics because he has a lot of metal on him and he's got some very big, wide open people. Yeah, I mean, you could do layered washes. You just have to be really careful of the colors you apply and in what order and where you apply them. Because obviously when you start putting various, if you use reds, blues, and greens, eventually you're going to have your red crush your green. You're going to get a muddy effect. So you got to be careful about it, or get lucky. Be careful or get lucky. You have two options for trying to create a pearlescent effect with washes. I am also, remember, I am a control freak painter. I I love the fine detail. So for me, I wouldn't leave it to washes. Or if I did, I would start with a wash to kind of bring up the texture, if there's any texture or imperfections in the surface. And then I would go in very carefully and introduce more colors. But I like precision. I like to start out and create a few painting artifacts to randomize things so it's not all just soulless, but I do like my precision. I will admit it. Control freak painter are us. But that's just what I take pleasure in the painting process, is being able to micro adjust things and really tune them down and bring out some really fine texture. I really love painting models where you look at it from a distance, you're like, oh, that's really nice. And then you get closer and you're like, holy crap. That's what I want. That's the result that I want. And it hasn't always been consistent with what, say, clients want. Jim at Darksword did a competition once where he had two of us. He had me and Matt Marzani paint the same box, and he put out two different versions of the box and saw which one sold better. And it was, at that time, it was not mine, because I was a lot more subtle, realistic style. And although my details were all fantastic and my blends were amazing, you couldn't really see that on the little figure on a box art. And so Matt had a lot more pop in his style. He had a lot more bright colors. He had a lot more really popped highlights, a lot more kind of Games Workshop style. And so his box actually sold better. So I acknowledge that my style is not for everybody. But I think I've gotten better at the pop and at getting that distance shot first and then zeroing in on the details over the years. It's just, but I've liked, this is just how I like to paint. I love tiny detail. Even on huge models, maybe especially on huge models. I showed you guys my Soldier 76 Overwatch statue that I painted last week. And that is that's 12 inches tall, but I still did detail on it that is so fine that you'd expect to see it more on a 28. I am the polar opposite of James Wapple. You are absolutely correct, Mighty Garrett. James loves to go by instinct. And I love that, and I'm trying to make myself do that more. But I do find that it's very hard to teach that way. Like, just handing somebody a brush and telling them to jump off a cliff before they understand some of the fundamentals, I think, is a recipe. Some people will love it, and some people will rush right in, and others will really get frustrated. So for me, I hate to say it, but I'm actually a teacher before I'm an artist. And that's always been this way. The minute I learn something new, I want to kind of break it down so I can teach it to people, so I can share my revelations with them. So for me, I want to break it down to fundamentals the way the old masters maybe used to do it, and then give you the brush and throw you at the piece. But I want to arm you with a good toolbox and a good understanding of why techniques work, why these brushes work the way they do, what is the best usage for this palette or this brush, what is your paint consistency, what does it even mean, how is it going to vary up your style to paint this way or that way. I like to talk about that stuff, because I think that not a lot of people do. I want to give you all the tools so that you can discover your way to do things, so that you're not an Ann Forster and you're not a James Wapple. You can look at both, understand what we do and why, and pick the best parts for yourself. Yeah, the freeform is super hypnotic, and it's just like magic, right, Namadzik? Like David does this too. If you guys watch David's stream, he has a definite precise vision in mind, but he's very freeform when he first starts. And I'm trying to make myself do a little more of that. That's why I'm working on Troll here. That's why we'll go back to Troll too. David even looked at this and went, this is a very David paint job. So you've got two different ways to think about it, right? Like, this is very loose. Like, I'm just very, very loose on this Troll. But look at the difference in the style, right? So you've got a very tight, articulate, like really, really tight detail style here, even though I'm not blending the way I could. And then you've got this much more loose, especially when you put them next to each other, much more loose painting style here, but it's got nice light, and so the light saves it. The light really makes the piece at that point. At that point, you are more painting for light than you are painting for paint, right? There's two different schools here, really, showing off, and it's a very different effect. So the best painters, I think, and this is why I'm striving currently to switch up my painting style a little bit, but I think the best painters try both styles, can execute both styles, and can understand like what the strengths are and the weaknesses are in both styles. And then you take that and you end up with a style that integrates parts of each. Yeah, Wapple's just really... he was a canvas painter first, you can tell, right? So was I, but I actually didn't do paint as much as I did colored pencil, which is a highly precise medium. And so you can tell, right? In our painting styles, in our artistic styles, you can absolutely tell. So this is why I tell you guys, think about that for a moment. Eventually, if you stick with this hobby, and if you really want to get like to the point where you can paint a model that you're really proud of, so you want to get like fairly good, right? Eventually you will get a style. And where you start and the things you gravitate toward and the things you get comfortable with first are going to shape that style. Like the whole mindset that you have toward painting. So it's a fascinating thing to think about. And so when you're early in your development, maybe you're like, I don't have to worry about that. But if you want to worry about that, you can, maybe shape the future you a little bit by trying a lot of different techniques and maybe like making yourself play a little bit more. Like with a Wapple style and with everything else. Like, see what style you really love. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of it. Just go for it. Oh, hey there, it's Derek. Oh, sorry, I missed a Mathophile question. Thanks for fielding that, Derek. I got off on my painting style kick, which, is one of my favorite topics in the world, is style differences between painters. So, so I went off on my tangent and missed Mathophile's questions. But yeah, you want a gradient between highlight and shadow. I just haven't quite gotten to smoothing that out yet. Now, the gradient between these is going to be pretty small and fine, though, because depending on how burnished the metal is, if it's got a lot of texture on the metal, then the highlight and shadow will be farther apart, and you will definitely see some midtone between them in the gradient. But if you've got a chrome effect or a very shiny effect, you will not see that midtone between highlight and shadow. It'll be just like the ferrule of this brush that I showed you, where you've got, pretty much right next to each other. And that's going to, really affect it. Yeah. Derek makes a good point about... photos aren't necessarily the best references unless you're trying to do environmental reflection. But usually I find environmental reflection works out better on bigger pieces of metal. Like Kirill's Knight that he did. That's a 54 millimeter Knight, and you can see the shadows of like the attackers, the people who are coming to attack the Knight in the armor on the horse. Like, that's insane. But only with a big piece of metal could you carry that. Yeah, Nomad Zeke, I'm not sure. I'm losing it. Trying to catch up with with all the discussions so I don't miss anybody again. Yes, your mileage may vary. Some instructors are going to rock your world, and some instructors are going to leave you cold. Yeah, sorry, Treasure Rocky Harlex. Let's see here. Trying to catch up. All right. Yeah, I love running down rabbit trails, especially about art styles. But yeah, it really is just, think about, yeah, right, if you used to use markers, that's super precise, and you don't get a chance to go back on markers, right, Kerniko? I tried to work with markers for a while, but the fact that there is no erase button, or very little that you can do, really scared the heck out of me. I love the fact that I can go back, even with colored pencil, if I start gently, I can use an eraser to take up a fair amount, right? So, yeah, but markers are really unforgiving. So that may very well have caused something in your painting style. It made some development in your painting style. It's really fascinating. Yeah, I'm really interested in it too, Dragoneye. If somebody asked actually a painting style question for our AMA, so I'm like super excited to like tackle that one. We could totally get off on tangents for that. Is it angent? Yes, angent, exactly. You kind of like the fear. And I've heard that from people who use markers, Kerniko. Actually, I've heard that you really enjoy that. And watercolorists are the same way, right? Because once you do it, it's down. And some people learn to love that thrill, right? But I have not yet developed in my painting style enough to love that thrill. That fear that I cannot go back on something. That I must leave it as it is. I cannot go back and futz. I like my futzing, dang it. Yeah, blending. Yeah, they are expensive. The Copic marker pad is actually what I use for a lot of my swatches for my Patreon PDFs because it'll crinkle eventually, but it is water, it's soak proof, so. And it's very white. I like how white it is. I get less color shift when I'm taking photos of my swatches. So even brighter. Bringing up that highlight to pure white makes it look even brighter. Let's see here. Let's bring our under reflection up a little bit. But you guys get the idea. So we're getting down. We are at 11. So we're probably at the point where... And actually, to go back to what Derek said, Mathophile, in response to your question... There's maybe enough room here and maybe enough room up here in the shadows that I might be able to suggest some shapes or something. But gold is also not going to reflect colors from the environment as much. And I've got a lot of yellow here surrounding Rocky, so I know my under reflections are going to be very gold from here. So if this was silver, you might be able to suggest some like trees or sky or something like that. A little harder with gold in my opinion. So any questions? Because it's about time to start wrapping up. I'm going to come down and just block in some highlights on this lower area. I don't know if it's no fun when there's no undo, but it definitely causes more stress. So it depends on if you thrive on that or not, right? And that comes down to personality. So that's also style, right? So it's all super fun. Would the non-coin treasure reflect light? There's only a little bit of non-coin treasure down here. There's a string of beads. There's a scabbard on a dagger over here. And there's this cup, but I was going to do it in metal. I was going to do it in silver. But would it... You can absolutely have reflected light on matte objects or objects that are not metal. So you can do that. Like we kind of did that on Rocky's scales to suggest they were a little shiny right down here on his butt. So that picks up a little bit of the light, and the gold there is picking a little bit up the red of his haunch. So you can absolutely get some reflections. It's really, do you have the space to convey them? Let's see here. If Anne could be a folk or a mini. Oh, Rax, my favorite animal is the fox, so I love foxes. I have many cute fox t-shirts. I kind of I am intelligent and opportunistic, so those are foxes. I'm a great example of an awesome human. Thank you, Francis. Thank you. I was told that I am kind of a border collie of humans because of my energy level and my lack of focus sometimes. I have razor focus on the things that I most enjoy and lack of focus on everything else. A dog show judge once told me it's a darn good thing you don't have a really high-strung dog, because if you did, it would be through the roof with your energy. At the time I was a little miffed, but now I'm a bit amused. So yeah, see, it looks shiny, guys. See? Shiny. Yeah, Kitsune. I actually played a Kitsune in a World of Darkness game, RPG, a long time ago. This stream ends around 11, strange usually, unless I want to cut it short, or we go long because I started late. And we did have a little Kiri break in there, so... Yeah, it should be nowish. Reaper Standard Time. I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. It's like, have I finished? Yeah, I haven't finished this little area, but I have done enough to show you guys what I'm talking about with making stuff look shiny without it being actually shiny. And this is a very cartoony NMM. Like, doing a more realistic one would take more time. But it is also a cartoony figure, so it fits. Alrighty. I think that, oh wow, Diesel. Now we're going to have to start our next countdown, Justin. We just got 5 more subs.
I see that.
Wow, it's sub day. You are so cool, Diesel. Thank you so much. Super awesome.
That is awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yay. That's so fantastic. You guys are helping us along. Remember, a sub for the show is a vote for the show. Tell the bosses that you like this show and that we need to keep doing Twitch. And we need to get, like, keep finding more content and stuff. Alrighty. I guess I have to say goodbye then and actually work. Kiri's got a vet appointment this afternoon, so I should like get working on getting her out again and lunch and getting her ready for that. It's just a checkup, so don't worry about the Kiri. All right. Do we have a raid, Justin?
Yes, we do. Let's see here.
Boop.
If the person is still online, hold on.
Sure.
No, they're not. So that's
Darn it.
fine. We'll raid. I'll give you two choices. We can do Jimmy the Brush, or we can do Zambies.
Zambies popped in here, I think, earlier, or she popped in the other day. So let's go over to Zambies, actually.
I got no
and
complaints.
everybody needs to read Derek's thing, as he's been painting for NMM for years, and he's still learning and experimenting with every miniature. Yep, there's lots of room for artistic license. Learn the fundamentals in theory before you go breaking the rules. Thank you, Derek. Exactly. Well said. Well said. Fundamentals first, guys, then go crazy. All right, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. I don't know what we're going to paint tomorrow. I keep promising you this dumpster, and I keep having to, like, just forget to base coat it. All right, so I will see you tomorrow. We'll do dumpster, troll, or some 28mm model. Who knows? It'll be a surprise. Have a great one, guys, and I'll see you. Have a fantastic Tuesday.
Thank you guys very much. Quick reminder too, there will be no crow's nest this afternoon. Proctor had some stuff come up. He did not really elaborate, other than I think it's his day job, if I had to guess. But so we will see you guys again tomorrow morning for Anne at 11:30, where I'm not entirely sure what we will be doing, but I'm sure it'll be fun. So thank you guys very much, and I will see you later. Keep being awesome. That's important. Spread the Reaper love, that kind of stuff. Thanks, guys.